the most important witness to Jesus is the Jewish historian Josephus, who wrote 4 works in Greek: an autobiographical life, a defense of Judaism and a rebuttal of an anti-Semite, Contra Celsum, the Jewish War, which recounts the Jewish revolt against Roman occupation from AD 66 to 74, and the history of the Jews from Adam to his era, the Antiquities. After he surrendered the fortress of Jotapata to the Roman general, Vespasian, Josephus became an apologist for the Romans and denounced the Jews, who had led the rebellion against Rome. Josephus has an important passage about the imprisonment and execution of John the Baptist by Herod Antipas. No scholar has questioned the authenticity of this passage, though there are some differences between Josephus's account and that in the Gospels. These differences, however, are easily explained. According to the Gospels, Jesus had brothers and sisters, the most prominent of whom was James, who was apparently converted by the appearance of the risen Christ, and became the head of the church in Jerusalem about AD 50. Josephus describes how the high priest Ananias took advantage of the death of the Roman governor Festus in AD 62, to organize a mob to stone James, whom he identifies as the brother of Jesus, who was called the Christ. Few scholars have questioned the genuineness of this passage. The most celebrated passage in Josephus is the so-called Testimonium Flavianum about Jesus. About this time there lived Jesus, a wise man, if indeed one ought to call him a man. For he was one who wrought surprising feats, and was a teacher of such people as accept the truth gladly. He won over many Jews and many of the Greeks. He was the Christ. When Pilate, upon hearing him accused by men of the highest standing amongst us, had condemned him to be crucified, those who had in the first place come to love him did not give up their affection for him. On the 3rd day he appeared to them restored to life, for the prophets of God had prophesied these and countless other marvelous things about him. And the tribe of the Christians, so called after him, has still to this day not disappeared. Scholarly opinion about this passage can be divided into 3 camps. 1. Those who defend the essential authenticity of the passage. 2. Those who reject the entire passage, and 3. Those who believe that the passage has an authentic core but also includes Christian insertions. Most recent scholarship has favored the last option. This passage was cited by the great church historian Eusebius during the 4th century in 3 of his works. The witness of Origen in the 3rd century is crucial. He was apparently familiar with the passage in Josephus about James but not with the Testimonium Flavianum as Eusebius knew it, for he wrote, "The wonder is that though Josephus did not admit our Jesus to be Christ, he nonetheless gave his witness to so much righteousness in James." Elsewhere Origen says of Josephus that he disbelieved in Jesus as Christ. Almost everyone agrees that a number of phrases in the passage are so patently Christian, that a Jew like Josephus would not have penned them. 1. If indeed one ought to call him a man implies that Jesus was more than human. 2. He was the Christ. Josephus elsewhere says very little about messianic expectations, because he wanted to downplay those beliefs. 3. On the 3rd day he appeared to them restored to life. This seems to be an unambiguous testimony to the resurrection of Christ. On the other hand, most of the passage is not typically Christian. 1. Jesus is called a wise man. Though the phrase is complimentary, it is less than one would expect from Christians. 2. For he was one who wrought surprising feats. This is not necessarily a statement that could only have come from a Christian. 3. He won over many Jews and many of the Greeks. Is simply an observation. 4. Those who had in the first place come to love him did not give up their affection for him. Conforms to Josephus' characteristic style. 5. And the tribe of the Christians, so called after him, has still to this day not disappeared. Most scholars would agree that the word plylon, tribe, is not a typically Christian expression. The Jewish scholar Paul Winter concludes, although Josephus certainly did not call Jesus the Messiah, and did not assert that his resurrection on the third day had been announced by divine prophets. The impression gained from an intimate study of his report is that he was not on the whole unsympathetic toward Jesus. In 1971 an Israeli scholar, S. Pines, published a monograph on an Arabic version of Josephus done by Josephus, the 10th-century Melkite bishop of Hierapolis in Syria. A comparison between the Arabic and their Greek texts reveals the following differences. 1. Agapius' version of Josephus assumes the humanity of Jesus. 2. His text does not refer to Jesus' miracles but rather to his good conduct and virtue. 3. The appearance after 3 days is mentioned as a report. 4. A disclaimer, perhaps, is inserted before the statement that he was the Messiah. All these differences lead Pines to conclude that the Arabic version may preserve a text that is close to the original, untampered text of Josephus. In summary, Josephus knew that Jesus was the brother of James, the martyred leader of the church in Jerusalem, and that he was a wise teacher, who had established a wide and lasting following. Despite the fact that he had been crucified under Pilate at the instigation of some of the Jewish leaders,